This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
Hello out there, good afternoon. This is another latest installment of The Discourse with Dr. Ken. It's our Independence Day, isn't it? Fantastic. 1st of October 2023, Nigeria is celebrating 63 years of independence. So today's discourse, we decided to make it special in the sense that we have brought you a very special guest. And we are going to discuss the Nigerian economy 60 years after. Yes, we may be 63, but we are going to take 60 years x-ray of the Nigerian economy, starting from the late 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s, and these days where we have found ourselves. So you relax, enjoy the day, and I must say, happy Independence Day for whatever that is what, Today is 1st of October, so it is what it is. When I come back, I introduce our special guests. I'm sure you cannot wait to hear who I have here. See you very soon.
This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
Hello, Ade. Welcome back. My guest for today, special edition, I must say, of The Discourse with Dr. Ken is, I call him Oga Bismark Rewane. So I've revealed that. Anyway, our promo said a lot of that during the week, so I'm very sure that you guys must be excited that we were able to track him down. So we'll have him for today for 55 minutes. Can you imagine that? And we're going to discuss the Nigerian economy 60 years after. You can reach us, by the way, on WhatsApp 09092172973. I take that again, 09092172973. And of course, on Twitter, Classic FM at 97.3. Oga Bismark, welcome to the program. And happy Independence Day, by the way.
Good afternoon.
How do you feel?
Happy Independence Day to all our viewers, all our listeners out there.
Yes. How do you feel?
Well, I feel, let me put it this way, I'm reflective and introspective about where we are. I don't think there's much to celebrate because there's a lot of pain out there. But I think it's a very important milestone in the sense that we have no choice now but to make the right decisions. And if failure to make the right decision at this time, and the consequences are going to be very severe. So that's my position, that it's a time of introspection and a time of Nigeria being at the crossroads.
I agree with you because it's a really big time for introspection, and it can be overwhelming if you consider the journey. And as we are going to x-ray today in the 1 hour program, let me take the profile as I do officially. Otherwise, all of you, if not most of you, know Oga Bismark Rewane. But just like the format describes, let me take his guest profile. He's the founder and CEO of Financial Derivatives, renowned economist, and elite finance and public policy expert. Bismark Rewane has over 3 decades of experience at the highest level of management and business advisory. He's a lover of truth, growth, and development. It took me 1 hour to summarize his profile because if I wanted to read out all that he has accumulated and achieved in these last 3 years, it would have probably taken a quarter of the program. So I'm sure that is sufficient. And I'll go into the questions. Yes, it cannot be all gloom and doom. Like our worry guys and brothers will say, they say, at all, I'm bad, have you?
I'm from Warri, so
Yes. Yeah, but I wanted to start from the 70s, the 80s, then go into the 90s, and then what is more recent with what we've seen the last couple of years. But let me start with this announcement by the federal government, because that is the main conversation around our independence. And it's saying 25,000 for low-grade workers. What exactly does that mean? And then it is for federal, it's not addressing the states. So there's some ambiguity around there. Then there's something around cash transfer to 15 million household. Maybe when we read it further, we can see the breakdown. But what is an Independence Day message? But
yes.
How are we supposed to receive that?
Well, let me first of all take it as a Nigerian out there. I hear the news that there's an increase of 25,000 naira on my 30,000 naira minimum wage for low-grade workers. I'll be excited. That comes to about 81.5% increase.
Okay.
Right? So that sounds interesting. But from a macroeconomic perspective, what have you done? basically what has happened is that you have increased the amount of money in circulation because you're paying these people for work not done. In other words, none of these guys are going to have increased productivity.
Okay.
And the definition of spillover inflation, or actually runaway inflation, is that if you put money into a system without an increase in productivity, too much money will be chasing too few goods.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. So I think the announcement effect is good, but it has to be followed by an increase in productivity of the people. This is not likely to happen. So let us first and foremost say, if you increase wages, you don't increase wages temporarily, right? Because this is a 6-month thing, which means that obviously there will be either a further increase
or withdrawal.
Well, I think maybe a further increase after certain things have been studied, but this is just to calm people down. I think. So that's what it is. But the macroeconomic impact of this is that you have put in so much without increasing productivity. 1. 2, I was the chairman of the minimum wage review committee in 2019.
Okay.
The law is very, very clear. That was national minimum wage. Anybody employing more than 7 people in the country, no matter what state you are supposed to pay 30,000 naira. And if you are a youth corper, you pay 33,000 naira because youth corpers get 10% more than the normal minimum wage. The total implication, what we did that time, the total implication was that we increased the minimum wage from 18,000 to 30,000.
Okay.
And then we had what we call the consequential cost, which means that every other person earning more than 30,000 got 10,000 naira increase. So we didn't prorate it all the way up. And also, that same day, we increased the VAT from 5% to 7.5%. So what the amount of money we put into the system was more than taken out. The VAT took money out of the people's pockets, but the minimum wage put money in the people's pocket. That is why in 2019, 2020, and the next year, you found that inflation was kind of relatively flat between 15 to 18% per annum.
Okay.
All right. So that it did not distort the allocation of resources. But in this case, we have, first and foremost, the guys were hit at the beginning of this year with naira redesign. Then we were followed by the elections, followed by subsidy reduction, then followed by exchange rate adjustment. All of these things took money out of the people's pockets and put it into government. The government has put money back into the system, 1, with palliatives, 2, with this wage review for federal government workers only at this time, low grade, and then the transfers, this on cash transfers to 50 million vulnerable households. From a macroeconomic perspective, it will create some distortions, but from a wage relief perspective, it will give some money illusion to people initially. But it will also distort that some private companies who do not have that kind of margin. And what happens normally is that the amount of money you have for wages is fixed more or less.
Yes.
And once you increase the wages, you have to reduce the number of people you employ. So
because there's a cap anyway.
Absolutely. Once there's an 81% increase in wages, you can expect naturally that there will be a reduction in the number of people employed, and that could be another problem.
It's good you extracted that for those of you listening. By the way, like I said, let me take our WhatsApp number again: 090921 72973. I take that again: 090921 72973. I'm very sure a lot of you are eager to send me those messages so that we can discuss your pain points. So basically, it's like campaigning in poetry and governing in prose, because these things, they sound ad hoc to me, the way you've described them. Even when they are good intention, is more of communication-led than a deep thinking output that came from proper analysis that has some hindsight, some insight, and then ability to foresight where we are going. So basically, there'll be more cash in the system, but have same or lower levels of productivity, and that can only bring distortion and some level of illusion among the populace. So that's what I hear you say. Well, again, let's go back to the topic. We'll come back to this, because this is the most topical of all the questions we are going to ask today because it's our Independence Day. But let's go back to the 70s. So I would like to ask Oga Bismark, how has Nigeria's economy evolved since gaining independence over 60 years ago? Let's have a peep into the 70s and 80s. Just
Okay,
a peep, because a lot of our listeners they don't even understand. They can't relate.
Okay, let me take the transition from an economy that was not oil dependent. It was a natural wealth economy. In other words, we produced cocoa, rubber, cotton, and all of that. And then oil came in 58, but then oil production was nothing until the Civil War period.
Okay.
All right. So we had an economy that was integrated, fully, regional governments, and the productivity was relatively high. Income per head was almost the same as that of China, Malaysia, Singapore. We were about $300 or so per head at that time.
Wow.
Now, our population in even inflated for all reasons, was about 60 million people, and that was inflated actually.
Is this the 70s?
I'm talking about in the 60s.
In the 63 census. 63 census, okay.
Before the Civil War. Then during the Civil War, we had national savings.
Okay.
Right? We had to fight the Civil War and buy military hardware with hard-earned resources. Our reserves at that time were like $500 million. That's all. That's all we had. But the quality of life, which is the main thing, the quality of life of the people at that time, when our income per head was $300, right? Quite frankly, it's much better than the quality of life today when our GDP is somewhat there. And I'll come back to this, but one other thing you must know, in increasing this minimum wage by 25,000, tomorrow morning, almost all employees are going to say, my government contemporaries have gotten an 81% increase, right? Therefore, I'm going to be demanding this. And so it's going to lead to a more charged industrial relations atmosphere, both in the private, public, and in the states of the country. So I think that is what we need to manage quite
delicately.
It's a treacherous path. But every employer of labor today has to know that on Tuesday morning we are going to be dealing with this demand for wages, and naturally so, because these guys are dealing with inflation, which officially 25% for the year on year. Monthly inflation annualized is about 45%. And inflation in certain respects, the synthetic basket tells you that inflation is already more than 100%. Okay, so this could help in terms of illusion, but also could create a situation which fuels, because money supply is growing at about 33% in 1 month last month.
Wow. And
if money supply is growing at 33% and GDP is growing at 2%, you have a 31% inflation factor automatically from that. Diesel was 190 about 3 years ago. It's now 1,000 naira per liter. So there's something there. So now let's go back to the performance of the economy
in the 70s.
So the 70s Nigeria was a post-conflict economy. And if you look at post-conflict economies like Ivory Coast, Rwanda, Liberia, so they grow rapidly. Because post-conflict means that all bets are off and you're coming back and all of a sudden
it's all push.
So if you say Nigeria sacrificed, every civil servant was asked to pay 20% of his salary was taken off as national savings, compulsory. And they issued them a bond. So once the war ended, Chief Awolowo as Minister of Finance paid off these things and all of that and started the whole process of reconciliation, reconstruction, and redevelopment. And that's the 3 R's. That was what got us to where. And at that time, in the early 70s, we had what they call the 6-day war in Israel, and the price of oil quadrupled. So we had a lot of dollars and all, and the economy started growing rapidly, and we had all these prices, and therefore But the oil, that shift, that transition from a natural world economy to from a produced world economy to a natural world economy where we're just extracting, actually changed and, kind of made us addicted to that. And the result is where we are today. So all values were thrown out. The economy became import dependent. We suffered from what they call the Dutch disease. We had dollars, and one head of state said, the problem of Nigeria is not money, but how to spend it, rather than how to invest it. So, but what happened was that the economy became dependent on that and oil price outside of Nigeria. So if you look at the economic history of Nigeria in the 70s to now, there's a cyclical trend that shows that when the price of oil increased, the economy did well. When the price of oil fell, the economy went into a recession and then went to borrowing. So both domestic economic performance and external economic performance was dependent on things outside our control. So we became vulnerable to exogenous shocks. Now, when you have that kind of situation, you need to build buffers. But our savings, our reserves was what were our buffers. But over time, as the performance of the economy became suboptimal, we found that the buffers and savings we had dropped. And once your savings drop, the next thing you do is to start borrowing. So from low savings, we went into high debt until we got to the point where when Obasanjo came and said, look, let's stop all this nonsense and let's go and reschedule our debt. So we paid, I think in all, about almost $18 billion, and they gave us a write-off of $18 billion and became debt-free by 2003, 2004. So the debt problem disappeared. We put what they call this savings benchmark price of crude, and we had excess crude accounts. So excess crude got all the way to $66 billion. Our reserves went to about over 40-something billion dollars, and our debt was almost zero. So from 2003 up to where we are now, we have a situation where our total debt, external debt is about, contractual debt is about almost $50 billion.
Wow.
Non-contractual debt, we have our excess crude account is below $1 million, all the way from $66 billion to $1 million. So the excess crude account has been raided. And so what is it that, what does this mean? It means the economy has become more vulnerable and has moved from just being vulnerable to becoming fragile. So the work that is being done now is good announcements, pronouncements by the president, followed by institutional reform. But it won't get you anywhere until your creditors sit with you and ensure that your reforms are going to be equitably shared and that it leads to growth in the economy. This year we're going to grow at about 2.5%, which is phenomenal compared to the rest of the world. But we need to grow at about almost 5, 6, 7%. And we'll come back to how can we do this. But the transition is from natural wealth, from produced wealth economy where we're growing rubber and cotton and all, to natural wealth economy where we're dependent on oil and gas, to the squander money years where we just squandered, right? And then to the borrowing years, and now we are up the creek without the paddle. That's what it is.
It's incredible. What I hear you say is I see a lot of bandages around the wound because we didn't quite treat it when it was just a scar. And anyway, but we'll come to that. There's a message from Dr. Dayo. He says, Naira devaluation is the bane of Nigerian economic growth. Why did Tinubu devalue Naira? We'll come to devaluation, Dr. Dayo. But I'd like to ask now. So pre and post, I mean, I've heard in the 60s and 70s, and then, and you compare that to what is happening today. But pre and post independent Nigeria, there was an economic growth trajectory. At what point really did Nigeria start to decelerate into this abysmal economy as a nation?
Well, I think clearly, it's not as easy as it sounds. Not that there was a point then we fell off the cliff. No. You see, the decay curve, you deteriorate gradually, and then it begins to pick up, right? And then, like I said earlier on, there's cycles. We had cycles of quadrupling of oil price and our economic activity, our reserves built. We built all of the things, Festac, all the ring road, we had Nigeria with 37 aircraft. We had national shipping line with 40 ships. We built all the ports. So it's not that we just took the money and squandered them. Yeah. We built infrastructure around it, but the economy was not integrated. There were no linkages.
Mm.
And it was all fiscally dominant by the federal government.
Mm.
So by the time we started privatizing by force, right, and opening up the economy, some of the damage had gone so far that we now need to take this shock therapy. And that's where we are now. There's no question. It is not about people. It's not about president this or president that. No, that's not the issue. The issue is that this has gone beyond people issue.
Okay.
We have structural defects which have created bottlenecks and interest groups that they have more interest in keeping the status quo, or in fact going backwards, than going forward.
Yeah.
So you have to, like I say, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So you have to confront those interest groups and say, okay, this party is over and let's move forward. I think that is key. Then again, economic symptoms are different from economic fundamentals. So when you talk about devaluation, is a symptom of a weak economy and low productivity. Inflation is also a symptom of those things. There are things that you need to do to increase productivity and increase growth and make the economy much more efficient. And an efficient, strong economy would also result in lower inflation, stronger exchange rates and all of that, and welfare of the people. I think let's not mix one for the other. I think that's a big problem.
Thank you for that clarity. By the way, listeners, you can reach. I've seen some messages. I've just chosen one for the moment, but as time goes on during the program, I'll read out those that are very, very close and they're relevant to today's conversation. But you can reach us on 09092172973. Twitter at Classic FM 97.3. I'm happy that you have laid the foundation and the fundamental, which has, x-rayed and brought the major fundamental defects of the economy in terms of the weak foundation. And you like you said, it wasn't just all weaknesses all the way, but there were opportunities lost because institutions we built, even when they look strong, we are not interconnected at all. But in the light of global economic trends and advancements, how can Nigeria now harness? Because this word potential, for me, I'm tired of it. How can you be talking about potential for a 63-year-old man? You can imagine that. It's a predicament. So how can Nigeria now begin to harness its abundant resources and human capital to promote sustainable economic growth and diversification, if you like? Okay,
there are two things. One is the policies and the strategy. The other one is the materiality. So when you talk about an economy, let me take for example the 2023 budget.
Okay.
2023 budget was submitted in the National Assembly sometime in December last year. Approved and all that. Let's go back to some of the parameters. Inflation was set at 9 to 15%. That was the target. The exchange rate was at about 415. The growth rate was set at about 3%. Oil production was about 2 million barrels. If you look at where the economy is now, 9 months after that time, it will seem as if whoever drew up that budget was either in an asylum or something happened, right? It was hallucinating. But that's not the truth. The truth is that things deteriorate very rapidly when not managed properly. So we now have a situation where we are now dealing with the reality and having to do that. Two, the total activity, the total budget was 29 trillion naira. Now, the GDP size of this country is over 200 trillion, 215 trillion naira. So all that we're talking about for the budget of this federal government alone is less than 10% of the economy. It's nothing. So even if the federal government was efficient, its size of its the proportion of federal government activity as a percentage of the entire economy is 10%. There's still 90% of the economy which is out there. And it became clear when that this is a tale of two cities. That when we had the redesign, currency redesign naira, total cash in circulation in this country is 3 trillion. I think they just announced yesterday to about 2.6 or 2.7 trillion. Money supply is about 65 trillion. So in all, about 5% of money supply is cash. What happened when cash was taken out? And all of us were into going to pay our cash into the bank and we couldn't get it.
Yes.
The economy ground to a halt because of 6% of total money supply. Because even though we had the transfer mechanism and all that, everything came to a halt. Not only that, the tips that you give to people, 1,000 naira, 500 naira, your boys are loyal and all that, we found that all those things brought the economy to a grinding halt. So don't be fooled by just data points, but look at materiality. The point is that these numbers are statistically are not material, but the weight they have and the fact that the bottom of the pyramid, because there are so many people, about almost 123 million people who are multidimensionally poor. So poverty is an issue, and the economy is stratified. So the rich, the 5% of the economy own about 81% of the resources. So they are all of those things put together. You cannot deal with one in isolation. So you come back to the four main things you have to do. One, is the economy growing? And if it's not growing well, what do you do
to make it grow?
Is the economy, is there fiscal prudence and responsibility, the fiscal data? Is there monetary sanity? In other words, you cannot have inflation of 29, 25, 26%, and you have interest rates in treasury bills of 9%. No, it won't work. And finally, the external imbalances. You cannot have external imbalances of the nature where you are producing 1.3 million barrels of oil or 1.2 million barrels of oil. Your quota is 1.8, and half of that, 400,000 barrels are stolen. So if you take the 4 points, the external imbalances, which were exacerbated by all sorts of mad policies, bokeh effects and all of that. 2, monetary divergence between inflation and interest rates, because the marginal propensity to save is affected. 3, fiscal irresponsibility and dominance within the government circles, the leakages, right? And then more than anything else, the economy is not growing as rapidly as it is. But you must understand that the formal economy, what is published is formal economy, $500 billion. The informal economy is about 30% of that. So there's $100 billion of activity under the
not accounted for.
And when you add that to the formal economy, you find that the people are not as poor as they look, and that the problem may not be as damaging as it is. So that's where the hope is. That there's some hope, but the reality is that Nigerian policymakers have to be truthful. They have to be honest. They have to be factual. There's no integrity in the statements that are coming out, and therefore people don't believe it. And if you don't believe, they will not make sacrifices.
Yes, leadership is about belief, because there's no belief behind it. Nobody's going to follow. Listeners out there, we're going to go on a very short break. I have Bismark Rewane in the studio, and we're discussing Nigerian economy 60 years after. So I come back after this short break.
This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
Welcome back. This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken. Our conversation today is Nigeria Economy 60 years after, and I have with me in the studio Bismark Rewane. My one of the areas I've made a living out of is building brands, and I know how countries have used the brand logic and brand application to build economies. So, Oga Bismark, listen to this. Countries like the USA, for example, Japan and Germany, even the UK and France, build their economy on the strength of their brands. What do I mean? USA have GM Motors, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, Facebook, McDonald's, basketball, etc. Japan has Toyota, Sony, Yamaha, Panasonic, Nintendo, Nissan. Germany has BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Adidas, SAP, Hugo Boss, Deutsche Bank. France has Dior, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Melo, Malbec, Bordeaux, etc. In each of these, you will see the country's culture. So they built these brands on riding on their culture, their history, and gave something to the world. That thing does not only bring economic value, but it helps them differentiate themselves and bring meaning to both them as a country and then to their people. And that proposition is converted into value, and they determine what value that comes from it. So they are built like that. So the question is, the brands are built on the plate of culture and history. Like I say, is this template not to be considered in Nigeria? Do Nigeria's leaders understand this? Does it I mean, because you've come very close to government and you are close to government. We have very intelligent people. What's going on? Do they understand? How can we be this different?
Well, you made a very good point about General Motors and all that. If you look at the Dow Jones, which is the top 20 companies, in 1929, right? Only one company of that time is on the Dow Jones today, which is not today even. That one is gone. It's actually, I think it's ExxonMobil and all that, but that's gone. So over time, countries adjust their strategy, right? And they leverage on where they have competitive advantage.
Yes.
All right. So today, Facebook, Apple, and all these companies were not even in existence 40, 50 years ago.
Yes.
But they have become leaders in everything they're doing, right? So what I'm saying here is that countries reinvent themselves and use intellectual property to develop it. Just the Japanese did that with Nissan, Toyota, and all that. The Germans did that with, again, post-conflict economy after the Second World War, First World War. And see where they are. Japan, post-conflict economy. So what we have done is that let us ask ourselves, what have we done? Where we are a source of competitive advantage. We take the oil industry, we have become decadent, right? Take gas. We took advantage of an opportunity. We built 7 trains, and that's our saving grace, and we have not been able to go further to do more than what we. So if you take away all that we've invested, all we have invested in the past, right? From the Abacha days and all the, right? What have we invested in since 2003? Since Obasanjo left the country?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, so if you don't invest, you can't get anything. So it's the product of investment that you brand and use the brand and leverage, because that becomes the invisible asset.
Yes.
Right? So you produce, but the invisible asset of saying, Facebook, right? Twitter, Google, Apple, right? Meta, those are Elon Musk, right? Those are the things that people leverage on. But what have we done? Right, and the areas where we have competitive advantage, maybe in the area of movies or music and all that. What have we done with it? Soccer,
the creative economy.
Yeah, and our intellectual property has been let fallow. So I think the strategy of how to get out of this, first of all, is to know that an economy that is not growing cannot even be branded properly, right? So.
Brand. I mean,
so
you can't brand out of nothing.
No,
because branding is not about. It's a promise kept. It's something that adds value.
Success story.
Yes.
Right? So we are the success stories. So what we do, we have celebrated failure, and we have you either have a meritocratic society where merit is rewarded, or you have a mediocratic society where mediocrity is entrenched. With all due respect, I think what we've done is to entrench mediocrity. Look around and see the people being praised and being awarded the awards that you get and national awards. It's not about mediocrity. It's a shame to be in that circle, right? If you lie down with pigs, you smell of carcass. So, and I'm being brutally frank here. But again, I don't want to delve too much on the problem. I'm looking for the way and solutions. The solutions are that we use those things that we have competitive advantage. If we're going back to areas like rubber, palm oil, and all that, we've seen what has happened. Look at the Como oil. Look at Presco. Right? Look at the rate of return, right? In the past 3-4 years, the stock has returned over 400%. While the economy has grown cumulatively over the past 3-4 years for about 12%. Cumulatively, averagely in a year, 2%. But these companies have returned to their investors 447%, which means they've returned about 100% a year to their investors. If you leverage on those kind of companies across, right? Well, look at MTN, look at Airtel, look at them. So leverage, sit down with these guys, give them what they want, right? Incentivize them properly. If you learn from them, and you just emulate what they are doing in running your country, right? Privatize, right? You will find that these things change. Look at, I went off to Lakowe last week. It took me 5 hours to go on the Lekki Expressway all the way past Sokoto.
Wow.
Right? For a distance of 35 kilometers. 3 days later, I went to Abeokuta from Victoria Island. took me 1 hour 15 minutes to go from Victoria Island into downtown Abeokuta. Right? And I came back. So can you imagine how much productive time was lost because some crazy road repairs are taking place between Lagos Business School and Sonkoto Road, right? And in fact, as a matter of fact, when I was coming back, I had to drive through Ogun State because I couldn't come back on Thursday. I did 150 kilometers to come back to Victoria Island from Lakowe, because I had to go to Ekwe, from Ekwe to Etoiki, to Ijebode to Shagamu, and all the way back here. Can you imagine?
With all the security risk?
Yes. Imagine the madness. So my man hours, my time spent because of the unproductive structure we have here. Diesel. For 11 days, there's been no power in certain parts of Victoria.
Yes.
11 days running. And so these are some basic things that need to be done. What do we need to do? Cost reflective tariffs, so that people can invest in it. If there are loans that are Discourse restructure them so that they are able to invest. Because either feeder pillar today, transformer tomorrow, this and all. And let me tell you, every 1,000 megawatts increase in power supply nationally leads to almost a 0.2% increase in GDP and helps the currency. There's a correlation between power, GDP, and currency performance. So when we tell our central bank does not run power. So let's have a coordinated approach to getting these things done, right? So the Lagos Ibadan Expressway, before you could never get from here to Mowe or Regime Camp with 3-4 hours. Now it's 15-20 minutes. Can you imagine how many
productive man hours were lost there?
And
debts.
GDP.
Yeah.
Right. So let's call a spade a spade. Why are you still trying to repair the road when you should concession the road to private people? I would rather pay a toll of 1,000 naira and get there in 15 minutes than not pay a toll and be hanging around for 3-4 hours. So we need to do that. And across all segments, look at your airports. The airport is a disgrace. The Lagos airport is a complete disaster. The pockets were water leaking from all over the place.
And so, it's first port of call for
why don't you concession the damn airport out? If a Nigerian is able to run Gatwick and Edinburgh and City Airport of London, why can't you do that? So you have to have the confidence to say, okay, come, do this, and let's run. Everything is done. Well, it's a mess.
It's a mess. But it's still Independence Day, so we're discussing how to come out of this mess. So I've seen a couple of messages. Many of them are riding along the lines of devaluation of the naira and all the things that Bismark Rewane has discussed. But since I'm getting a lot on this exchange rate, because exchange rate today is 1,000 naira to $1.
1,008.
1,008 to $1.
And 1,300 pound.
It's incredible. So, is it a death sentence?
No.
Okay.
Reality is that there are many ways of measuring an exchange. An exchange rate is a number.
Okay.
An exchange rate mechanism is one that allows you to determine the exchange rate efficiently, right? So what has happened here is that the exchange rate number you have, which is a parallel market rate, normally in big market, in frontier markets, it's about 20 to 25% exaggerated from the normal equilibrium. Therefore, if it's 1,000, right, you have to discount 25% of it to give you fair value. So I would say that the fair value is about 750. When you look at the numbers that I see, what they call the hamburger index, when you use the price of a hamburger, Burger King here, divided by the price of a Burger King in New York City, it gives you about 880, and that's on the high side, right? If you use what we call the purchasing power parity, where we take a basket of goods in Lagos and divide it, including a trolley at the airport, right? Uncle Ben's rice, eggs, right? You divide that by the price in the dollar value divided by the naira prices. You get an exchange rate today. I checked it yesterday. It's about 725 naira. JP Morgan said the fair value at that time when they did it about 3 months ago was about 680 naira. What am I saying here? That the PPP value is about 725.
Okay.
The hamburger index, which is exaggerated, is about 880. The Other indices show that it could be about 725. And if you take 20% from the 1,000 or 25% from the 1,000, you get 750. So the fair value at this time should be about 750. Okay. Why is it going to 1,000? Because of some missteps. When you make statements that, like, if you cannot use dollars in your domestic account to guarantee loans, right? It's madness. When you have commitments, forward commitments which you didn't honor. When you have airlines, the total airline backlog is about $800 or $900 million. And so you have to want to buy a ticket now. It's
dollarized. Yeah.
So all of these things, there are some administrative measures. Let me break it down. One, because you don't have enough dollars, because the oil revenue is weak because of oil theft. Because you have administrative measures that are inimical to reason, because it's all about confidence.
Yes. And
thirdly, because people are not bringing their money in. At the Radisson Blue, the price shown today is 767 naira for dollar if you pay with your American Express card. But if I walk across and I go to the Malam, I'll get 1,000. So why would a man use his card there? He will use his card to draw dollars if he can,
and walk across
and get 1,000. You get 25% more. So you've got to stop the administrative controls, remove all those restrictions, and more than anything else, be honest with the people. If the reserves are actually $4 or $5 billion, when you say your reserves are $36 billion, that's false. And everybody can see that. If you have $36 billion and your backlog is $6 billion, why can't you just take the money from the reserves and pay it off? If the reserves are actually there. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that the policy statements being made about the backlog is reflective of the fact that the reserves that you're publishing
it's inaccurate, because I was asking if it was a calamity, because let's have a throwback. In 1983, 1,000 naira could get you $1,500
yes
at 66 kobo. In 1993, 10 years after, 1,000 naira will get you 45,349 at 20 kobo. 2003, 1,000 naira will get you $7,730 at 129. 2013, 1,000 naira will get you 6,336 at 159. 2027, this is official rate, 1,000 will get you only $1,284 at 708.
1 million, you mean?
Yes, I mean 1 million, sorry. Anybody following this, this can push you to consider suicide.
Not only that, you are going to be betting against your own currency, you see. So it's all about confidence. But let me tell you, after Brexit, before Brexit, the pound-dollar rate was about 1.6, 1.58.
Yes.
After Brexit, it crashed. And then when Liz Truss became the Prime Minister,
yes,
it got to 1.01. That is, 1 pound was equal to $1. When things changed, and after Sunak came in, the thing got to about 130, 1.30. It's now about 1.21, and the economy is beginning to pick up again. So
it's all about confidence.
Confidence.
So it comes back to leadership, because I'm going to ask questions around leadership.
Yes, so I don't think the fact that the currency is running away from us, and to be honest with you, we have. In South Africa, the rand is about almost 19 or whatever it is. Ghana, yeah. Ghana went all the way, right? And so weak currencies are not necessarily.
Yeah, that's the question I was wondering. Because it sounds like a calamity, but weak currencies is not a measure.
No. As a matter of fact,
in fact,
the competitive devaluation allows you to become more competitive.
Yes.
So, and I think that is, to me, that's the key thing that we need to understand it and communicate properly to the people. But if you have no credibility, when you're talking, as soon as a government leader comes on television, people put up their TV.
Yes.
Because they say, I'm not interested. So we've got to build credibility back. Luckily, we have, I think that the central bank has new leadership. and the honeymoon will be there. The new head of the place is credible, so, and he's not going to say things that he doesn't believe in, and he's not going to do anything dumb. So we have a window to work with that. But like I said on television,
sustainability now.
It's a tree doesn't make a forest. The man has to make sure that what he says is right, and the people that, and he works for a team that has credibility. You cannot work right. So it's a team spirit. Like you say, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together.
Yeah, you're right, Oga Bismark, because you can even see it in the soccer we love. I mean, it's a team spirit. Yes. One player doesn't make, you can see the tiny tots with their best player out of the team. They seem to be even playing better. Even though for me, I consider that a temporary flourish. But now, you've painted the picture. A lot of the messages I have here, and I'm tempted to pick one up, to summarize, because they are saying we seem to have a group of people who are holding Nigeria to ransom because of their personal interests. Do you believe in that?
Well, I don't think it's holding to ransom. People have what we call enlightened self-interest.
Okay.
And it happens everywhere, Donald Trump and John. But you see, people get the leadership they deserve. The demand for good governance is not a negative thing, right?
Yes. So,
the people that benefit, say, let us take something like subsidy. People that benefit from subsidy scam, probably 2020, maybe 10,000 people in the whole country.
Max.
Right? And you have 200 million people on the other side. What is at stake for those 10,000 people is maybe $3-4 billion. If you share it amongst them, each of them will have $30 million. They will kill themselves to give up that.
Yeah.
While if you share that $3 billion amongst all of us, 200 million people, the best we'll have is maybe $20 or $30 million, $30 each.
Yeah, which is hygiene money.
All right, so $30 or $50, you're not going to kill anybody because of $50.
Yes.
But these people that are losing $30 million can kill, they can murder and do anything. So it's what we call a value at risk. The value at risk for those guys who are want to use holding us to ransom, which I don't believe it is, it's much higher. But the point is that in the end, whether it's $30 million or $30, what is going to happen to everybody? This house will collapse if we don't do something about it.
Yeah.
We are at the precipice. So Nigeria has to wake up, and it's better to be.
So is at a cliff now?
Well,
it's either he jumps or he's kicked.
Yes. No,
so we have to choose which one.
The truth is that we have no choice but to do the right thing. And so that's my optimism that because we have no choice but to do the right thing.
Gotten to that point,
Yes. So Nigeria will recover.
We'll
recover very rapidly in the year 2024. We'll see it. But not without making some sacrifices.
Okay.
So sacrifices.
Yes. Is it sacrifices? When you say sacrifices, Oga Bismark, is it sacrifices on the part of leadership or on the part of followers?
More on the leadership.
Okay.
In other words,
I needed to emphasize that.
And the oligarchy.
Yeah.
Right. Because the people have made enough sacrifice. The only sacrifice the people are going to make now is to work harder. Right. But if they work harder, if they know that their work is going to give them benefit. Right. But for the leadership, first of all, they have to introspect.
Okay.
And they have to get rid of the oligarchs, because if not, you'll have a Russian system.
Because this is the scenario.
Yeah, that's all. You're going to have Abramovich and all that type of thing, or you will have an economy that is thriving, like you are seeing in China, in the United States, and all. So that's all. Your choices. The choice is clearly yours.
Okay, so we're winding down, but there's this question. From what I've heard today, as pessimistic, but there's a lot of hope in Nigeria. I mean, look at the size of this country, look at the resources we have, especially when we begin to recognize. I like the word you drew my attention to our intellectual property. I think that is exactly our biggest problem. You cannot do without the intellectual property and recognizing it and giving it its own due. But Nigeria at the moment, whether we like it or not, seems to be a country in receivership and under liquidation, if it was a company. So what can we do to continue to take this concern up once again? I know you've mentioned it here and there,
but what is concise, so that let's just hit the nail at the head,
There's, in economics, there's a big difference between the gross national product,
yes,
that is gross domestic product,
yes, GDP,
which is what we produce, and the gross national income.
Mm.
The gross national income includes the income of Nigerians overseas,
okay,
right? And the gross national income of Nigeria also deducts what foreigners are earning in Nigeria.
Mm.
If I steal oil through vandalism, and the oil money, I sell the oil in Ukraine or somewhere, right? And the money goes into a private account in Mauritius, right? That money is part of Nigeria's gross national income, right? So what you want to do is to harness the incomes that have been, and make sure you convert gross national income to gross domestic product. In other words, allow those who have taken their money and all that to come and invest them here. Yeah. Allow those, make sure that your interest rates are attractive so that they can come and invest here. You can't harass people and all that.
Factor everything in.
And then when they invest, when your people start to invest in your country and do not take money out, you will find that the investment has an investment multiplier, and with linkages, which will create jobs, right, and create output. If you don't do that, you have a problem. Secondly, do not underestimate the meaning of when I said you must concession roads, right?
Yes.
If you concession roads, if it now takes me only 1 hour to move my goods from Lagos to Ibadan, another hour to move it to Ilorin, you will have reduced the cost of logistics. Logistics cost in Nigeria is as high as almost 14%, 15% of the total cost. And guess what? If you multiply it now, 1 hour at petrol, right, to go to Abeokuta, and the petrol cost me 617 naira per liter. Or if the petrol cost me 198 naira, and it takes me 4 hours to get Abeokuta, I'm spending the same amount and wear and tear my vehicle. So from a macroeconomic perspective, it makes more sense for me to pay the economic maintenance and achieve efficiency than to start using nominal numbers to say, oh yes, I'm earning 25,000 naira more. What does 25,000 naira buy?
How does that change the price of fish?
No. So as a matter of fact, so recognizing that, right, and let the people decide themselves which is more efficient. They will pay. If you have an alternative road and you don't want to take the alternative, you want to join a model that you go there. But if you want to get to where you're going to fast and get your goods there quickly, everybody will pay. And 1 hour, from here to Benin City, it will take me 3 hours max. So if I was to go by air and the flights are full, I have to get there 1 hour before departure. Right? And when I get to the airport, I have to get, when I could have
just driven to Benin,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
by the way, we did that up till even year 2005.
Yeah, so I'm saying that efficient use of resources, and there's one factor at the close of that says it's called total factor productivity. Nigeria's total factor productivity, which measures the optimal use of capital stock, has been negative all along, and it just started becoming positive in the last 12 months. Why? Because certain things are now beginning to fall in place, right? So you are going to see positive total factor productivity, which means that if you have these roads efficiently used, if you have the ports efficiently used, and look at the port ships by awaiting berth. Apapa port, right, has only 40. Tinkan Island port has 0 ships with awaiting berth because nobody's going there. So, and what is happening? Worry. On a port has 0. So the 12 ships awaiting berth, right, shows a shift to other ports in Nigeria where the roads are getting better. And therefore, if I bring my goods into Warri Port, I can get the things onto the train and get them all the way to Lokoja or wherever it is, and from there do things. People are making those efficient decisions now. And so, if you put all this together, I think there's hope that some things will happen, but there can be no gain without some initial pain, both by the government.
Yes, I like that we are ending with hope. Although I would have loved to squeeze in a question, which is around the BRICS, the dollarization agenda of the BRICS. Do you think Nigeria should consider that?
Nigeria, first of all, if you're efficient, the BRICS will be inviting you.
Yes.
You shouldn't be applying.
South
Africa did not apply.
Yes.
They were identified, and birds of the same color fly together. Right? So I think that there are no shortcuts to this thing. The thing is that we have to work hard. And we have to be honest to ourselves. Dishonesty is the first thing. Dishonesty in public office, where people are telling lies to the public and playing on their intelligence. It doesn't work.
Fantastic. We're ending. You know, I promised you at the beginning of the program that we will take your favorite music or track for the week. So this is the time. And then, of course, you have one African proverb. So maybe the African proverb first. What would be African? People are waiting. They are waiting. I can see.
Well, my African proverb is that it is the shoulder that you know to identify who stole the goat.
It is the shoulders.
Yes, the dirty shoulders will show.
They show who stole the goat.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And the music?
It must have been love.
It must have been love.
Okay.
You get that. Thank you very much, Bismark Rewane. Happy Independence Day again. We started with the predicament, we started with our worry, we started with all the challenges, but we ended with hope. I still think Nigeria has hope. We just have to think right, think positive, and then begin to understand that we are progressing in error and admit it, and then move in different direction. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic week ahead of you. Bye.
And that's it on The Discourse with Dr. Ken.